PGA Nation, we are back, and we are back for the U.S. Open, a big major this week, and we got a full field. It is going to be a bloodbath out there this week, and I am psyched because you got to be able to pick them knowing how tough the course is going to be. Spence, it's going to be super interesting to hear your course breakdown this week. Before we get to all that, we have a very special guest on with us tonight. Sticks Picks in the house. Nick, how you doing tonight?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. It's been a hell of a year, obviously having the kid in February and then all that good stuff. So kind of took a step back from doing content. Still do a lot over at DFS Army, like cheat sheets and whatnot, but nothing like the live stream with the boys. So this is awesome. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to pick your guys' brains because I do not know what to do for my lineups right now. So I'm excited to hear everybody's thoughts and get the crowd participation as well.
We are certainly excited to have you back on Drafting with us, breaking down this tournament with you. For those of you who know Sticks, and if you don't know him, he is incredible content. He does a betting show with Spencer for years. If you want to make some money this week, you follow his content and you will get some W. Spence, how you doing tonight?
I'm never going to complain, Joel, during a U.S. Open week. It's my favorite major of the four. It's typically been my most profitable. It's one of the few events that I count down for every season. I'm going to tell a very quick 2-minute story before we get started today. I know Nick always has a running joke that anytime I say that you just smash the over with it. And that was one of the things that we used to talk about on shows. But I got started in this space in 2018. I would say, like, personally, I'm a very driven person. It was marginal success that I was having on the content creation side for the first 3 years. Like, betting was great. I wish I could churn out 60-unit seasons as I did then. Markets are just not quite the same anymore. They're much more efficient. But for myself personally, I really wasn't getting anywhere from a publicity sense for whatever reason. My guess would be because I only did writing, didn't do podcasts of any nature with that. But the story that I'm going to tell is that Berger had won at the AT&T. Homa had won at the Genesis. Things were kind of firing on that front for me. And I got a message from Nick before we started Better Golf together. One, he congratulated me on the Homa ticket. Two, he asked me if I wanted to start a golf podcast with him. And I've never told you this part of the story, Nick. Like, I said yes, sight unseen to that. I didn't check your page. I didn't necessarily dive any deeper into it. And in theory, that's a really terrible strategy. But
I could have been a serial killer, for all you know.
Well,
I mean, could be, I guess. But
well, the funny part about it is when I got into the live chat with you to go do the show, I didn't know what you look like. So when you came out and I think you had your camera off at the time and you got in front of the camera, that was my first time seeing you there. And we did that show together at the WGC Workday. And I would say that was probably where my career ended up taking off. Like, I've always loved doing shows with Nick. He talked about it. He's had a kid. Congratulations with everything that he has going on. But it has definitely been far too long since we've done this together. And I'm just going to double down on that stamp of approval that Joel had talked about. Like, Nick is as sharp as they come in this space. He's fair and honest. He's really everything that's right about this industry. And lucky to call you a friend and happy that we're able to do this together again.
Yeah, thanks, guys. That's very, very heartwarming. I'm glad we did the show. We'll bring it back soon. I just got to figure out when I could sleep again. But it has been getting better for those that are. Joel, you're a parent, aren't you?
Yeah, I've gotten 2. That's
Dude,
right.
All right. So month 4, we're on month 4 now. It has been so much better. My son will only wake up once throughout the night. Before, he was super early, so we obviously had shit going on when it first started. But we had to feed him to keep him alive pretty much for every 2 hours throughout the first 6 to 7 weeks. That was miserable, dude. That shit sucks. And I know people out there have gone through way worse. So all things considered, super blessed and lucky. But yeah, dude, I didn't realize how much I missed sleep until the last couple weeks. He's either sleeping through the night or waking up at once at 3 a.m. and either all bottle feed or my wife will nurse or whatever. One of us goes right back to bed and it's great. So life changing since then. So perfect timing. He must have seen Spencer texted me to see if I wanted to be on the show because he started sleeping like a champ after that. So let's go.
Well, it is a blessing to finally get your life back. You need some sleep. And when you get it back, you come back here and you make some money with us. And what better week to do it than the U.S. Open at Oakmont. I am stoked. Before we dive into this course, let's just take a quick pause. And let's just quickly recap. I actually don't know this for sure, and Spencer, correct me if I'm wrong. I assume Courtney won last week. No, Courtney did not win. Who won? Did you win?
I came in last. The audience ended up winning. They stole Sam Burns from me, and that was what pushed them over the edge.
Wow, big congratulations in order. Spencer devised a plan to take a member of the audience off their team, and they still won. And then they got Courtney back, so the audience is getting stronger. You guys are good chance to win again this week, so good luck. You have Courtney. You got a lot of our regular faces already in the chat. We appreciate you guys. You guys are the best audience in all of podcasting. We super appreciate you guys. You make our show work. In case you're new tonight to the show, a quick recap of what we're doing. We're going to break down the course in a minute, but then we're going to do a draft. A real draft, a snake-style draft, like your typical fantasy football league. I will draft a team, Nick, Spencer, and then audience, you draft your own team. You can participate in the draft if you're following along. Log into YouTube. Basically, the way the draft will work, everyone picks someone like the snake, 1 through 4, and then 4 through 1. So whoever goes last will get 2 in a row. Audience, everyone can put in a nomination. So when it's your turn to pick, anyone, just say who you want. Put golfers out there. As soon as a golfer is seconded, so when someone says that golfer's name twice, that's the audience picks. It gets locked in. Audience, you won last week, so therefore you get to pick the order. So audience, go ahead, drop a draft order in the chat. I prefer team audience to go first or last, so you guys get 2 picks in a row. It's a little bit easier for me to manage, but you guys won, so you guys pick. So the first person to drop an order in the chat, that's the order we're going to go with tonight. While we wait for that, Spence, let's go back to you. Oakmont Country Club, it is going to be a very difficult course. The rough is extremely long. Tell us, what are you looking for tonight this week in terms of a course breakdown?
Yeah, not all major championship tracks necessarily get the most out of their property, but there's a reason Oakmont will be hosting its record-setting 10th U.S. Open here in 2025. I want everybody to think of a course that's essentially a U.S. Open golf test through and through. It was established over 120 years ago. If you look at the last 2 iterations of this in 2007 and 2016, we've seen Oakmont produce a plus 4.63 total per round. That ranks as the most demanding course in the previous 25 years of venue that we've seen in action. One of Oakmont's most famous hazards are going to be those church pew bunkers. Those are present on the 3rd and 4th holes. Golfers can find all sorts of issues in that area, and it gives you a real taste of the entire landscape when you consider that 175 plus bunkers and 5-inch thick rough is going to accompany this venue at all turns. You have vast open landscapes, no trees, no water. All of that adds to this unique link style test. And then when you add in that narrow fairways that you get, the shot making creativity, the scrambling potential on these diabolically quick, and I do mean diabolically quick, like they're going to be the greens at Oakmont are the true test of what keeps this property as difficult as it is. They're also large, but you get presented with this all-around examination that's going to punish wayward drives. It's going to reward that short game acumen, and it forces players to think critically about the best way to salvage par when there are millions of issues that inevitably will come up throughout the round. And, I talked a lot about this in some of my writing, and we'll talk about it more as the show goes on. You're not going to be able to avoid mistakes. What I am trying to find in my model are the golfers that are going to be putting for par from 5 to 6 feet more frequently than the golfers that are going to be putting for, let's say, bogey from 5 to 6 feet. And I do think there are a couple of statistical metrics that you can dive deeper into, and I'll talk about those as selections get made throughout the draft.
Boom. All right. There you have it. We definitely have a tough test on our hands this week. The order is locked in. Great job, Andrew. Great job, audience, coming together on this. Audience, you will be picking first tonight, followed by Spencer, Sticks, and then myself last. So I'll be on the wheel. I'll get 2 in a row, and then we will go back. Audience, congratulations on the big win. You are king of the draft. Will you be able to repeat? To be determined, but you are on the clock. So start getting those nominations in. As I said before, the way it works is anyone can make a nomination, nominate a player you want. As soon as that person is seconded, that is your pick. And a huge mistake was made. You guys took the first pick and didn't take Scotty Scheffler. I don't know how that happened, but Bryson DeChambeau, in a shocking turn of events, is off the board at 1 overall. Spencer, you're up here with the second pick, but give me a comment. Are you surprised that Scotty didn't go off the board at 1?
I mean, yes and no. Like, if you look at ownership right now, I see Scotty at about 40%. I would be interested to see what numbers you have on that, Nick.
37. So, yeah, 40.
Yeah, I have Bryson at 28. He's the second name according to that list. So it's not a massive shock to me necessarily. Like, if I look at this $10,000 plus range, and this is going to be a little bit more of a unique answer than I typically have given in this spot recently, because Scotty is just inevitably the destruction force that seems to take down every single tournament. You really can't fade him in any of these spots. But I will say, from an optimal sense, when I ran this, it doesn't mean Scotty was the most or not the most optimal, but there were other routes to consider at the very top. Bryson DeChambeau was one of those routes that my model seemed to like a lot, just because you have a $3,400 savings there. But look, I think it's fine with any of those names. I think you can make it work. It's just at the end of the day, Scotty is obviously the best player in the world. And as I move forward in my pick, Joel, I guess this draft at the US Open has just gone completely sideways at this point. I'll let Nick make the decision of Scotty in a second, and I think it's fine to do, but I am also not going to take Scotty. I'm going to take another name at the top here. I am going to select Jon Rahm.
God damn it.
And so
already.
That's the frustrating thing is, this was the Sam Burns discussion last week for me, to where out of nowhere Burns was stolen from the audience, and then it just changes the whole style of the draft. But I did an Action Network show for the Olympics last year, and I talked about, essentially, you had a board, and this was more of a betting answer than a DFS return here, but you had a board where Scotty Scheffler was 3-1, Xander Schauffele was 7-1, Rory McIlroy was 7-1. You had Jon Rahm at 16-1 price, and I kind of talked about he was the true forgotten star of the field when you could grab him at that total. And there was only 60 players in that tournament. You now have a 156-man field. I got him at 14-1 to actually win this tournament. It looks like it's more in that 12-1 range now. But in my opinion, Rahm has fallen into this territory, and we just saw it from the audience. And I'm not saying this is correct or incorrect, where Rahm is viewed as the second fiddle of LIV Golf behind Bryson DeChambeau. A lot of that super fair. Bryson's put himself into contention to win pretty much every single major outside of last year's Open Championship. But when I started to crunch my numbers, you got this world of past Rahm success and then the current form, and those two things have started to mix together again. So when I looked for true win equity in this field, Scotty Scheffler's number one. I'm not going to go against that being the argument. He is the most likely golfer to win, but Jon Rahm was my second most likely golfer to win from a win equity perspective. And if you look at his price tag compared to everybody else, I like taking a shot on him in this spot. So it's going to come down to, can the driver return to the glory days of 2021 when he won the US Open? We don't have a ton of data, but if I can look at what he's done on LIV, and he completely dominated at Quail Hollow, a lot of that is starting to point in that direction. So I will take Jon Rahm here with the first pick.
Well, I do have a question for you, and you mentioned it a little bit there at the end. How much do you discount, or does it affect your ability to play LIV golfers by the fact that we just have so much less data on them? We don't see kind of the LIV strokes gained metrics as much. So does that change your approach? I mean, you know kind of what kind of skill set Rahm has, but will you discount them? I mean, obviously you took them first, but will you discount them in any way in your drafts, or are you basically playing the LIV guys just as much as you are the PGA guys?
I mean, I think it's player dependent at the end of the day. There are certain LIV golfers, maybe more towards the bottom, where it's just tough to know exactly where they're at. But you use a name like Rahm or DeChambeau, like I think those two are kind of the poster children for this example here. It's just Rahm at his very best. We could go back and forth, and you could make an argument that Rory's the second best player in the world. You could make an argument that Bryson's the second best player in the world. There was a time you could make an argument that Xander was the second best player in the world. But I do think at his very best from a skill set perspective, I probably do lean in the direction that Rahm is the second best player in the world. And if this was a golfer, in my opinion, that was still on the PGA Tour, it's not that Scheffler, and the same thing goes for Bryson, by the way, but it's not that Scheffler wouldn't be having as much success. I just don't know if we get Jon Rahm at 10,200. I think it's much more likely that Rahm probably pushes himself into that like 12,000 sort of a range. So I think he's too cheap at the end of the day, and I see 23% ownership right now. I think that's perfectly fine.
Oh, all right. Well, Nick, I want to go to you here. First of all, I can't imagine you expected Scheffler to get to you at 3, but here you are. You got the third pick. What is your take on the first 2 picks between Bryson and Rahm, and where are you going with your first pick?
Yeah, my exact box was Bryson and Scotty to you guys, and that gives me Rahm, and that did not work out. So glad the Derby season's over as well. I mean, I have to take – I hate everything about it. I never do it, but I got to take Scotty Scheffler. But I do want your guys' opinion. Like, we are in insane, unprecedented times of $14,400 on the salary. I know, like, that also is kind of not created equally because we do have a 5K range now too for majors, which we really haven't seen. So like maybe like the even price, I guess you want to do like some sort of weird math. He's like 13,000, right? I guess with the 5K range. So it's not like terrible, but some like the stats that I'm really looking at, obviously driving distance is something that matters. Total driving, I think, matters a little bit more in terms of, fairways hit and distance combined. Bogey avoidance is something I'm looking at a ton. Obviously ball striking at any tournament. And lightning, fast greens, like historic putting. Scotty's putting this year has been phenomenal in comparison to and the whole tour. But comparison to him, like significantly better. Love to see the strokes gain putting at the Masters. He was awesome with the flat stick there. Very fast greens, probably not as fast as Oakmont. I'm sure we'll see like a 15 on the stimp. But the putting, I feel like, is back to normal. I trust that. The bogey avoidance in terms of the field, obviously we don't have that data for Liv like you just mentioned, but over 2.7% better than anybody else. That is a massive dispersion. I think that's what matters most for, I'm an MME player, so I do want a lot of upside, but I also want as many lineups with 6 of 6 as I can, kind of just like survival by attrition. So I think it's easy. Obviously, like we don't need to talk about Scotty much more, and I just talked about him for like 5 minutes, so I'm back to my rants. Appreciate you guys having me back, but a 10% bogey rate when the next best guy I think is Sepp Strack at like 12.75, 12.85, whatever. I'm just using the PGA Tour stats there, but phenomenal. So give me Scotty Scheffler, but what do we do with 14,400 at 40%? I feel like in MME, I'm leaning towards fading that and using the combo of the 2 guys that you just did, Bryson DeChambeau, Jon Rahm. Also not going to be very different doing that, but I do not want to have multiple 5K guys in my lineup. So I do treat some of them as like mid 6s based on, the flexibility of lineup builds, even when playing Scotty.
Nick, you brought up a great question, and I think I want to address it here in the price of like, how do you make this build work at the 4K range? And I've been playing with it, the last hour or two before the show, making lineups with Scotty and seeing what they look like. And what I've come to the realization on, if you just skip the 9 and 8K range altogether, which you can do without an issue. I mean, most weeks Lowry and Straka would have been in that high 8K range, and now they're in the 7K range. So like you can play those guys and still feel like you have contenders. You can do that and totally avoid the 5K range and still be a pretty competitive roster of guys who can compete at a US Open without needing to dip too low into these like complete lottery ticket 5K guys. I just think they really made the pricing extra soft this week. I mean, it is a loaded field with these live guys, but because it's so soft, more than previous weeks, you can really build a pretty competitive lineup with Scotty without having to go super down low to somebody that's pretty much irrelevant or unlikely to make the cut. So I'm not really scared off by this 14.4, and it's mainly because of how they've priced everyone else and where you can find value elsewhere in the draft, and that's what we're gonna uncover here for the remainder of these rounds. But let's go to you, Spence. What's your take on the 4.4 price tag?
I think the price is fine. We were talking about this, Joel, before Nick came into the chat before the show. And, 40% of people are going to play Scotty Scheffler at 14.4. I think you're going to get probably like about half the people that are going to want to go that route, or 40% of the people, if we want to call it that are going to want to go Rahm and DeChambeau on the alternate end of it. So, there are different ways to try to build this. I would agree with Nick. Like, the one thing that my model did not like about Scotty, if there was anything, is there are some suboptimal routes. And maybe you even mentioned it too, Joel, to where if you go too aggressive with a Scotty build, you put yourself down into that $5,000 section too often. And my model didn't necessarily love that route with it. But look, I mean, if you want to fit one 5K name in there, I think that's perfectly fine. It'll open up some salary elsewhere if you go there. It's just, you have to be cognizant of it with a Scotty build, because a lot of those builds really want to push into that same direction of Scotty, insert $7,000 golfer that's cheap. Insert the $6,000 golfers that are going to be popular. And a lot of those builds are going to kind of fit that mold over and over again. And it's just something to keep in mind. But like, look, if I had the 103 in this spot, I would also have taken Scotty. Like, he shouldn't go any further than this. And there is still an argument to be made that he's still the 101 off the board, even with the price tag and the ownership.
So my question to you guys is, and again, if I don't know if we can talk this much on this show or if it's just get the draft and move on, but let's say 45% of the field uses Scotty Scheffler. How many of that uses two of the three, Shane Lowry, Sepp Straka, Corey Connors? Because like all three of those guys, yes, form's great. Course fit on paper is great. I feel like that's the way I'm going to go. If I'm going to play Scotty, I'm going to play more than the field. So I'm going to have 50, 60%. And I got to figure out the other 40%. Is it going to be Bryson and Rahm locked in, or I may even fade Bryson if I'm going to play that much Scotty? Like, I got to be a little bit different here. And that's, I think, what I'm going to do with Scotty is just make a rule of these mid-tier, underpriced chalk players that sit in the upper sevens, the low sevens, is just I can only have two of, those 4 or 5 guys. Shane Lowry, Straka, Connors fits easily with Scotty Scheffler. I have 6,400 left over. If I want to go to the mid upper fives, I don't know who's a guy. I always play Jordan Smith for whatever reason. So I always like him. Always bet him top 40. I don't even know if I'm actually. He did. He was good at the PGA when Scotty got arrested. I think I had a good ticket on Jordan Smith. But like I could do that and I could fit. Let's see, with 7K. It gives me like Wyndham Clark, Jason Day, like tons of good players, right? And so it's like, is that the way to get different to Scotty? Is to make weird rules to where you can't just pile on the chalk? Because I'm playing 150 and trying to do very well in the Millie Maker for cash. I think this is probably the way to go. But what is your guys' thoughts on like the actual game theory of making side rules around Scotty and optimizers? Because those that do use optimizers and don't do stuff like this, I think you're definitely putting yourself at a disadvantage. You do want to think about like, what is the public build with Scotty Scheffler? Because I'm not saying Scotty's a bad play at 14-4. He likely has to win or get second to pay off that massive salary. Obviously, has the most win equity in the field by $1 million, but you have to get different with the players that you're playing around him. Otherwise, you're building the same lineup everybody else is.
I'll add to that middle range mix that you said, Russell Henley and Keegan Bradley. Two of them, exactly. Bradley too. But I think if you put those, 4 or 5 guys together, you're right. I think everyone playing Scotty is going to have probably 1 to 2 of those guys in their lineup because it's just easy to work and it makes sense. I think that's okay. I think to your point, you have to think about that. If that ends up being the case, like if you're doing putting rules in an algorithm, I think you just got to make sure you have a few players that are under 5%, right? And I think if you just do that and mix that in, I think it's going to be fine. But I think it's a really good point to make, right? There's another strategy that comes into place with the fact that there's this crazy priced golfer that also is going to be 50% on, which is just a wild equation, which means there's going to be a lot of natural overlap in the way people build that lineup. So Spence, I'd love to get your take on this as well.
Yeah, those 2 names that you mentioned were 2 that I was going to add to the mix. I just think at the end of the day, that's kind of even what I was saying at the very beginning of this with the Scotty Scheffler discussion is you have to be cognizant of what other people are doing because, I think we have a bad habit as an industry to where I don't even want to say specifically people that come on shows or write articles. Like, it's just that a lot of the same names get dropped over and over and over and over again. And if you want to dip into those $7,000 golfers, look, they're all playable. I like every one of them in pretty much different iterations of builds. But where it becomes a problem is if you start stacking, just pick a random couple names from there. That's Scotty Henley. You could drop down to like a Harris English that's a little bit beneath that. Like a lot of these names are just so popular that are going to get fit over and over again with Scotty. And that would be the one thing that I'm trying to avoid. And just to have the Jordan Smith discussion, like Joel asked me, Nick, before the show, how many golfers in the $5,000 range was I comfortable playing? And I gave, I think, what he deemed to be a very high answer. I said there were 7 players that I would consider in some form or fashion of potentially putting into builds. And that doesn't mean every single one of them necessarily makes my player pool, but I still have all those guys as options. And Jordan Smith was one of those names that did fit those lineups that I think you can get a little different. And my metrics really liked him. So, look, I mean, that's a lot of discussion with information further in the show, but I actually think the show probably works better having these discussions rather than always trying to keep it so close so nobody steals the picks. Like, the show works better to have a wide open conversation, and let's try to decipher this, because if we can help anybody to win the Millionaire Maker, that's worth more than any of us individually winning the show. So I think it's a great discussion to have.
It is. It's a really good discussion. I think that's what people are thinking about this week, because that's the big strategy. Obviously, Scotty is the top player out there. So how do you make that work? For me, I'm going to have a strategic draft here, right? For me, you guys took the top guys off the board. I might as well go get my value now, because that's where you guys are going to be targeting. So I'll start there. I'm going to take Shane Lowry and Sepp Straka off the board with my first 2 picks. And I'm going to go right to that 7K range. Those are my preferred targets there in the 7K range. I think both guys have a ton of upside this week. They both will find a lot of fairways. The ball striking numbers have been through the roof for both of them. I think they're going to strike the ball as well as anybody, maybe outside of Scotty Scheffler. These guys that can hit the ball really well. They'll be in fairways. You're going to want them to make some putts. We saw Sepp Straka find a hot putter recently. Lowry not as much, but it's one of those weeks. Just avoid a disaster. Avoid 3 putts if you strike it well. Nobody's going to be 10 under. So just avoid going over par, and you'll have a good week. And this seems like one of those weeks where Lowry gets you a top 10 or top 15 by just striking the ball over everybody else. So at only 78 and 7,700, I think both these guys have top 10 inside, and those are the values we're talking about that you can jam in when you want to put in a 14-4 salary, or even if you want to go with a Ramen DeChambeau combo at the top, you can make that work with these guys lower down in your lineups. Nick, love to hear from you. Are you interested in Shane Lowry or Sepp Straka this week?
We pull the ownership I have for both. Yeah, but I'm probably going to bail on one of them. I think I'm going to be out on Shane. Or I don't know, dude. It's tough. I'm not ready yet. I don't know. But I have to make some sort of rule with Scotty, and like Sepp, his putting is so damn good too. Shane, I feel like every time I go heavy Shane Lowry, something goes wrong for me. But yeah, his bogey avoidance is fantastic. Everything looks great. So I don't know.
All right. Well, I like everything looks great. That sounds good for my first 2 picks. Spence, what about you? Are you interested in Shane Lowry and Sepp Straka this week?
I mean, I think what Nick was saying is probably correct. It's an ownership dependent answer of how you're going to construct your build. For me, when I look at it, I mean, they are neck and neck next to each other inside of my model. If you force me to get rid of one of them, not that I necessarily think you have to, I might lean in the opposite direction and say I would rather play Shane Lowry than Straka. But at the end of the day, we're literally picking holes into players because of ownership. Nick and I have combined to give 0 statistical reasons why Lowry and Straka don't make sense into a build. It's all an ownership-based answer with it. So, I think when that is the only argument against it, it's sound. Ownership matters, but we were talking about it with Scotty. You take both of their ownerships, they're going to be 30%, 31, 32%. There are ways to get different. There are a lot of different options you can dip to that makes the lineup more contrarian with it. So I don't have anything negative to say about either.
Ooh, I accept both of your takes. And Nick, you got Scheffler off the board. Now you got to figure it out. You got to figure out what value plays you're going to make to round out that lineup. Your second pick here, who you taking next?
All right. No hesitation. I'm going with Mark Hubbard, 5,600.
Boom, right to the 5K range early. I love it. Mark Hubbard off the board. He's someone that's an interesting course fit, right? He should find a lot of fairways. He's going to strike the ball well. Spencer, I'd love to hear from you. Is Mark Hubbard someone that was in your pool of 7 in the 5K range?
Yeah. He's right. One of the 7 that fit there. And
I was hoping so.
Nick and I know Nick thinks I'm probably fucking with him when he texts me this whole time. He always gives me messages during the majors and says, is this player in your pool? Is this player in your pool? And the answer is almost 95% of the times yes on it. I think Nick and I think very similarly in a lot of spots, but I think Hubbard is definitely a value that you can consider down in that section. And he was pretty much top 40 for me across the board at 1% ownership. And, a lot of these metrics that I looked for from approach, if you're trying to find just a little bit more upside that could come into play, 17th in my model with his approach game when he approaches into firm greens, 5th in my model when he approaches into really fast greens. So That is at least something that gives us a profile that might even be a little bit better proximity, better approach play than we normally get from Hubbard. And if you look at what he has done most recently, I know the last week result, 47th, kind of took away from a lot of this, but I mean, you have a lot of top 25 results over the last, handful of, we'll call it 2 months or so.
Yeah, what I like the most there in the data pulls that I did and kind of adjusted proximities and whatnot, but obviously the fairway finding is elite for him, which is something that, my guys that aren't bombers, I need guys that are going to be in the middle of fairway. His ball speed's up over 1.5 miles over last year, so I think he's hitting the ball as long as he ever has in his career. We know the putter is probably his biggest weapon, and 5 straight made cuts. His last missed cut, we're not going to count the Zurich. It was the Valero Texas Open, and I think he opened up with a 77 or a 78, if I remember correctly, because I'm pretty sure I played him that week. And then fires a 68, which I think was tied for the low round in round 2. So he came off of that with a little bit of form and then started running a little bit. So for 5,600, and mainly the reason I like him is because he's in that 1% or lower threshold. So that checks the box that, Joel mentioned earlier, finding guys that are 5% or lower to pair with Scotty. You don't need a whole lineup full of them. And I think us kind of just finding a way to fade Lowry or Sepp Straka is maybe reinventing the wheel, which you don't have to get that crazy, because I could fit them in perfectly now with Mark Hubbard and be plenty unique with Scotty. So Hubbard's going to be one of my 1% darlings this week. So I'm going to trust it. I love the data. I love that he's hitting it longer than he ever has and not sacrificing accuracy with that.
All right. Mark Hubbard off the board, the first in the 5K range. Spencer, you got John Rahm here first. You have about 8K per range left to go. Who are you taking with your second pick?
I think I've done this in pretty much every major show that we've done so far, that I keep building these really live-heavy lineups over and over again. And I'm going to take Joaquin Niemann with this selection. And I think it's a really lazy narrative for everyone who keeps using the argument about Niemann's lack of success that he's had in major championships. And look, I'm not going to sit here and give him a ton of credit for backdooring a top 10 at the PGA Championship. He shot himself out of that event on day one and ended up working himself back up the leaderboard. So that top 10 is not even really necessarily a true top 10, but I've already written about this. I've put this out there. Performances are meant to grow over time. And I think when you look at a guy specifically like Niemann, I'm under the belief, and this would be more of a pre-Xander Schauffele winning a major answer, but I think if Niemann had not left for LIV, we're probably looking at Niemann as one of these very similar Xander Schauffele sort of golfers before he finally got across the finish line. Instead, now we kind of take the anti-approach of that, where a lot of people view him in the darkness range of it, of all the negative viewpoints of why does he not find more success when he gets to major championships? Why do things seem to go south? But according to my model, I kind of made this argument for Rahm. I thought he was the second best win equity player. I could make a really strong case that Niemann should be a top 5 win equity choice in this field. And if I believe that to be true, he's approaching into this tournament or entering into this tournament with another win off of LIV, which we can keep discrediting him doing that. I understand it has not necessarily worked out for the best, but more so of where I want that to go into with it is if you look at the first 2 majors. I don't have the prices up exactly in front of me right now, but I want to say at the Masters, he was 9,600, smaller field, but 9,600 there. I want to say at the PGA Championship, he was 9,300. So you want to tell me now he's finally giving you a top 10. He's won a LIV golf tournament coming in. I think this is a really nice course fit for him for everything that he does. And now he's the cheapest he's been during any of these majors. So for me, when I was looking at even the outright board when he opened at 35-1, he was probably my favorite value. I was not anticipating Niemann getting back to me. So I am very pleasantly surprised to be able to start with Rahm and Niemann here.
Ooh.
93 and 9,600 Masters and PGA. So yeah, dead on the pricing there. Big discount here.
Spencer, we're gonna have to start calling you Team Liv if this.
Yeah, Spencer's a LIV bot and he didn't even know it.
But audience, you are already getting nominations in. Great job. Continue with the nominations as we wait for that pick to lock, which it might be already, but you need 2. Sticks, are you interested in Joaquin Niemann this week?
Yes, I am. Very much so. I have a ton of interest in Joaquin Niemann. I think that he'll manage a course just fine. I don't think he's going to implode. I know he's got a little bit of a temper like John Rahm, but the ball striking is phenomenal. The distance, he's probably, I think I have him top 5 in expected driving distance and top 20 in expected total driving. So yeah, for 8,600, you probably could have made him 9,500 again this week to be, average with the other 2 majors, and I'd be interested too.
Boom. All right. Joaquin Niemann off the board. Consensus, he is a go for this week. Audience, great job getting the picks in. Courtney, we appreciate you men in the captain spot tonight. Lock it in. Xander Schauffele and Harris English off the board. A lot of the top of boards going. I think Xander at this point, certainly makes sense. I really like the Harris English pick. I think this is a setup that he could excel at. He can make a lot of putts. If he gets a hot putter this week, that might be enough with how difficult the course is playing. He should find some fairways at only 6,700. He's certainly a value pick this week. Nick, I would love to hear your take. Are you interested in either of Xander or English as well?
I think I'm out on Harris English because I'm seeing like 13%-ish in the 6K range. Don't have a whole lot of bad things to say about him as well. Obviously does very, very well on tough courses. That's kind of always been his narrative. Xander Schauffele, I haven't decided. He's probably my favorite golfer on the PGA Tour. I think Spencer and I used to talk about Xander all the time. I don't like that he's missing fairways like at a significant clip. Obviously, he's coming off the rib injury earlier this year. Ball striking seems to be back from the iron play. I don't know. Like putter's not necessarily back where it needs to be for what he's 10-4, 10-6, 10-4. You got it written right. Yeah, I'd rather have John Rahm at 10-2, 10 times out of 10. So at that point, I'm probably not playing Xander, and I'm probably fading Harris English on the ownership principle here.
I'm with you on the Xander one. I still have some concerns on the current form. I love Xander when he has it all dialed, but I just don't feel like he has it all dialed yet. Spence, I'd love to hear from you. Are you interested in Xander this week? Or you have a different feel for him than we do? And what about Harris English for you too?
I agree with what Nick said. Obviously, I've already made that decision of taking John Rahm at the very beginning instead of Xander, but I like Xander. To me, Xander is, I mean, we can call him the second name into a lineup with the John Rahm there. And it makes a lot of sense. Like if we're looking at this board in the $10,000 plus section, like I would massively at the same similar ownership percentage rather play Xander for $2,000 cheaper than I would play Rory. Maybe that's not reinventing the wheel. I mean, I don't think people seem to be lower on Rory on this week, but I like Xander. And then I don't know. I mean, as far as Harris English goes, I bet him at 100 to 1. I'm going to give you a little bit of a question here, Nick. And this isn't a question to where it's super difficult. I just want to hear you say this player's name because I've missed you saying it over the course of time. But I ran this because I was trying to find it from an outright betting perspective. And I wanted to see how likely is it that somebody goes and wins the U.S. Open and they win the U.S. Open and they never win another major again. So if you base this from 2009 on, a little less than 50% of players that have won the U.S. Open made that site the only location for their major championship victory. I hope all of that makes sense. I know it's a convoluted way to go about it, but can you name one person that has won the U.S. Open since 2009 that has not won another major other than the U.S. Open?
The German Hammer, Martin Keimer, or did he win the PGA?
I think Keimer won something else with it. I'll give you a hint.
All right. Yes, I do know it. It's got to be Lucas Glover, right?
Well, that's congratulations. You've given one answer. That's not the Webb Simpson answer. Lucas Glover is one of the answers there. I was trying to bait the Webb Simpson answer out of you, but no, Lucas Glover is another name that fits that criteria. But I honestly think Harris English kind of has that same similar profile, maybe specifically to a guy like Webb Simpson, to where they're top 25 players in the world entering this event. They're priced as a triple-digit long shot. This is more of a betting answer than a DFS response here, but they're priced as triple-digit names down in this section, and they have really good profiles, and they're kind of forgotten about commodities. So, look, if you don't want to play him at 15% ownership, that's fine, but I do think he makes some sense as like an outright bet or a top 10 choice and kind of bet for the upside there. But I mean, I agree with Nick. Anytime that you start dealing with these sub $7,000 golfers that are pushing up the scale of ownership, you're always kind of tempting fate with that.
Yeah, and you do like to see the comp course. I know it's not necessarily a comp course, but I always like to look at Torrey Pines, and obviously he won the Farmers there this year. We had that ticket, I believe, which was fun. But yeah, I don't. Looking at his data, looks awesome. Bogey avoidance, accurate off the tee, gonna putt his ass off. I don't know. Is the ball striking as good as it needs to be for 15% ownership? I'm gonna probably find out on the fade, so we'll see.
That's fair.
All right, Spence. Is that your pick?
I haven't made a selection. I was just talking about
Can that be your pick?
I mean, I guess I'll take him if I can, but no, I'll give a different name from this. So I think this is I'm going to take Tommy Fleetwood here. And I think Fleetwood is a name that oftentimes gets underappreciated kind of for similar reasons, different obviously because we've seen Neiman win on the PGA Tour, but similar reasons as Neiman, to where this lack of win equity that comes into play in people's minds seems to hurt him a little bit. And when I was building out profiles of golfers that have won the US Open, what they came form-wise into the tournament, what was their price when they won, I couldn't help but kind of make this corollary connection between Matthew Fitzpatrick when he won a handful of years ago, whatever year that was in, and Fleetwood this season. And none of that necessarily means that he gets across the finish line, but we saw Fitzpatrick. He was about 30-1 to win that tournament. A golfer that had not won on the PGA Tour, was definitely lower in the minds of most people, and he ends up winning that event. Like, I think it's very likely that Fleetwood could follow that same exact blueprint of never winning, and then all of a sudden he wins a US Open. In my model this week, there were 3 players when I took all 4 strokes gain categories plus weighted scrambling. So off the tee approach, around the green putting, scrambling, of 3 golfers that landed inside of the top 30 of every single category. John Rahm was one of them. We talked about Xander a little bit. That's one of the reasons why I like Xander. Fleetwood was the 3rd choice for me there. And, you know, I feel like, Nick, you and I talked about this quite a bit, maybe even with the Xander discussion that we used to have. We were always much higher on him than consensus seemed to be. And one of the reasons is we always talked about a lot of these close calls are probably as much bad luck as they are bad play over an extended amount of attempts. So I don't even necessarily need Fleetwood to win here at this price to get me across the finish line. If he can just be that steady top 10 performer that we've seen him be in majors in the past, anything else that he adds on top of that's only icing on the cake. So I really like Tommy Fleetwood this week. I bet him outright too. Like, those are the 3 outrights that I have on my card at this point. So I kind of just doubled down with all of those names, and I'll figure out where my value is underneath that. But yeah, I'll take Tommy Fleetwood here.
Interesting. I was hoping he would get to me. I'm surprised he didn't, considering I missed the top of the board. I still miss Fleetwood, but we'll see how you finish out your squad. I think it's a really good start to your draft. Disappointed I wasn't able to steal Fleetwood for myself. Nick, you're up with your 3rd pick. Would love to get your take on Fleetwood this week as well.
Yeah, I love Fleetwood. That was going to be my next pick.
Well, there you go.
And Neiman's gone. Damn it. This is fun. All right, let's see here. Yeah, I mean, I feel like Fleetwood should be 9,500 too, and I'd still play just as much of him. I feel like he's a walking top 10. This is I mean, I feel like Spencer and I have said it many times. This is probably like a perfect type of venue for him to get a win at. I feel like we said the same thing at the RBC like the last 2 or 3 years. Doesn't happen, but I feel like for 8,800, what you see is what you get with him, and his return always seems to be. I feel like every millionaire maker, he's in the lineup in a major, so I get it. I feel like I'm going to go down the board one more time. Do you guys love Corey Connors? He's not my pick, but I just like he's fade worthy here too.
I mean, I think he's kind of in that range of a lot of the other guys that we've talked about down in that $7,000 section, where you can mix and match, play 1 or 2 of them, get rid of a handful of them.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. All right, I'm betting on the talent here. I feel like he's having a hell of a year, especially now that he's playing a significant, like a lot more golf in America. I'm going with Thorbjorn Olesen.
He hasn't trended. That's a good pick. So there's your way to get different, right? Take a name that's not one of the major names that we mentioned, a guy who's trending. I think that's a really sneaky way to get different. Find a guy who's got some upside, but isn't one of the major names like Connors or Keegan or Henley, who's going to carry a bit more ownership. Spence, would love to hear from you. Is Thorborn in your player pool this week.
Yeah, I liked him also. And I was looking at this because I found this interesting. If you compare Olison's price on DraftKings compared to FanDuel, he is the 73rd ranked person, quote unquote, in what his price is if you take all the players on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's the 21st person. So a 52 spot difference in the ranking there, if you want to put that as a ranking total between what his price is on DraftKings and what his price is on FanDuel. So very difficult to get Thorbjorn Olesen into a lineup on FanDuel with the way that Nick has built it. Like, it'd be very tough to go that Scheffler Olesen route. But if you look here on DraftKings, it's a much simpler route and much simpler path to get him into there.
Boom. All right. Lock that in. I got two here. I'm scrambling. I'm trying to be strategic. I know what guys I want. I'm going to figure out which is the right route to take for this draft. And I think I'm pretty dialed in here. I'm going to start with the guy you mentioned. I'm going to take Corey Connors. I'm okay with taking a little chalk here, the value. I mean, I don't have Scotty Scheffler, so I can survive that. I love the way he's going to be in the fairway a lot. And if we saw how long this rough is, I think that's going to be a big advantage for him. And I think I'm overweighting driving accuracy this week. I think the way we were seeing on these videos beforehand, how crazy the rough is, these guys who live in their fairway, I think are going to find a big advantage. And so Corey Connors is one of the few guys that has the rare combination of distance and accuracy, and just living those fairways, which I think will be a big edge here at Oakmont. And I'm going to pair him with, in this round, I feel like I don't need to take him here this early, but I can't let this get away from me. So I gotta, let me just make sure how much you guys have left. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and steal Colin Morikawa here.
Okay. Thank God. All right.
So Morikawa, I'm going to the top of the board. I had to get one of the studs that can give me have some win equity. Morikawa's not playing his best, right? But he's another guy that's going to be in fairways. He's a ball striker. If he finds a hot putter this week, I think Morikawa can compete. I mean, I certainly see a top five. Heck, even winning the tournament's a possibility for him. So I needed one of the studs. I think, for the guys who I have left available to me, I think he gives me the most upside. So I like Morikawa here. Nick, it's back on you with your fourth pick. I'm glad you didn't have a player stolen. So who is it that you were hoping for?
I wish I could just go back to back here, but I'll pick before you. I'm trying to look at salaries. All right. Are we buying into Sam Burns is back?
I mean, Sam Burns he may be the number one putter on tour. He's the worst putter I've ever seen before. He cost me my outright last week. So not very happy with him. Model of
5-footer uphill on the right edge. That's a righty's dream. I'll miss it too, but I know that if there's any putt in the world that I want, it's that one. All right. Give me Sam Burns. I like that. I like his caddy, Travis Perkins. He used to be on the bag with Scott Piercy. I'm pretty sure Scott Piercy top 5 this thing in 2016. So if that's a trend, I'm going to trust that Perkins knows his way around here. Sam Burns' ball striking seems to be kind of on autopilot the last kind of since the PGA. And we really haven't seen that. I know he was, 5th, 6th? Let me pull it up at Byron Nelson, but seems to be back. I'm going to bet on the come that Sam Burns is back. Shouldn't be 7,100. I don't think he's going to 3-putt very often, which is going to happen a ton for a lot of players on these greens. Sam Burns, final answer.
All right, Sam Burns off the board. He's definitely back. I think I can give you that one. I mean, the way he's played over the last 6 to 8 weeks. I mean, he's proven he's got his game. He's looking good. The result, obviously last week he spiked. If you're looking for a value play, I think that definitely makes sense. Spence, we'd love to hear from you. Are you interested in Sam Burns this week? And then you're up with your fourth.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. My model, I'll actually transition this. This is how professional I am, Joel. There were 3 players I had written about at the start of the year. I'm going to keep one of them nameless right now. But what I talked about is they were golfers that were not necessarily viewed as top 15, top 10 values on tour. And as the season went on, I wrote about these 2 names being golfers that I think by the end of the season, people are going to view them as top 10 talents. And I mean, in fairness, Sam Burns missing a 5-foot putt, not beating Ryan Fox has not helped that cause of getting in that direction. But you look at my model this week, I mean, he's a top 15 player in this tournament. I think there's so much to like about him. The second player who I'm going to select here that I had talked about was Russell Henley. I tend to agree with you, Joel, with what you've talked about. Like, for me, it's not necessarily a distance versus accuracy thing. I asked the question of, it was an and or. Like, can you be long and straight? Or can you at least be long or straight? Because for me, as long as you fit one of those two criterias, I think that there are recipes for success. Like, I would make the argument, if we're talking about actually winning this tournament, I'd rather be long. I think length helps you to win this event. Long and straight. Like, but that's the Scotty Scheffler, that's the Bryson DeChambeau, that's the Rory answer, that's Rahm. Those are all those guys when they get hot. But when these golfers can also add accuracy to the mix, there is a blueprint where you can find success there. And my model really continues to like Russell Henley in a lot of these spots. When I weighed the metrics for just Oakmont this week and just from a tee to green perspective, he ranked 8th overall in my sheet, and he was 3rd overall for scrambling. So he kind of carries that exact blueprint of what I'm looking for. And interestingly enough, I didn't get there as an outright ticket just because I started with Rahm, and it makes a card a little bit more difficult. But he did have positive win equity trajectory inside of my model, and that's typically a pretty good sign that if you're going to take a 12% owned golfer, I would rather see them have that upside, more of that little bit of like potential that they can increase into the mix than the downside, just because I'm shooting for the moon here for GPPs. And if I'm going to take a popular golfer, I'd rather see that top 10 potential. And Henley kind of churned that out over and over again when I built this.
I love the pick. He was one of the guys I was contemplating with my last pick. I didn't get there. Fortunately, he won't get back to me, but he's definitely someone in my pool. As Nick even said earlier in the show, there's a staple of about 5 to 6 guys in this range that are going to be pretty popular, right? And I think that doesn't mean you don't play them, but just pick a few that you like and don't overplay them and get different the rest of your lineup. Henley's one of those guys at a 7-4 that I think is capable of getting you a top 10 and getting value while you go and chase guys like Scotty and Rahm and what have you. Audience, you are back on the clock. I see a few nominations are in. We need some more nominations to get both. Again, audience, you got 2 here to get both those picks finalized. Hey, we appreciate you. First of all, Byron, back 9 bets in the chat. We appreciate you coming back on. He's been a guest host drafting with us plenty of times. If you follow us, I'm sure you follow Byron and see his content, but he was right. Smash that like button. Give us a follow. It goes a long way. Prasant, we appreciate you as well, giving us the shout out. Hit the like button. The audience does have a good team brewing here. Are you guys going to round that out and get another winner to go back to back? To be determined. There are a few nominations in. I see Cantlay, Keegan, Ben Griffin, and Ryan Fox. Guys are hot, but haven't been competing in these majors. And that's it. The first pick is finalized. Ben Griffin off the board for team audience. Audience, keep getting those nominations in. We need one more. So it can be Akshay, it can be Fox, Keegan, Cantlay have all been nominated. While we wait, let's go to you here, Sticks. Are you interested in Ben Griffin this week?
He plays Max Fly. I play Max Fly, my personal game, so I like him for that reason. But yeah, I mean, he's probably the hottest player on tour outside of Scotty Scheffler, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's been red hot. And if you want to find a guy who's just playing above his grade, his level right now, that is Ben Griffin at 7,200. I like that pick from Team Audience. Team Audience got a nice squad coming around here, and the second pick is locked in. Fox off the board, coming off a win. He looked great last week, getting the win at Ryan Fox. Spencer, how about you? Are you interested in Ben Griffin or Ryan Fox this week?
Yeah, my model like both of them. I think that like what I was deciding between with my selection was Russell Henley or Ben Griffin. Probably was going to take the other one that I did not select. So I think that's a good pick there from the audience selecting Griffin. Like my model seems to kind of be viewing all of what we've talked about to where we want to call him the hottest player in the world. Well, it shows even statistically. And I want to say, Nick, I think you and I are in a fantasy league together.
First and second place right now.
First and second place. And I believe you have Ben Griffin, correct?
Yes, he's Max Fly guy. I'm true to my people.
Yeah, you sniped me in that draft. That was somebody I really wanted. I don't remember exactly how it played out. There was a handful of names there. Like JJ Spawn was one of them. We were kind of going back and forth, and you ended up taking Ben Griffin. And I think it's obviously paid out very handsomely. He's statistically just dominating right now. So I really like the Ben Griffin play. I I always have to take somebody for my lineup that is just so volatile that it just ends up burning me. Like, I don't know why I just always find myself in this spot to want to do this, but I'm very curious to hear what Nick thinks about this selection, because I feel like this is a Nick like through and through play that I can't tell you how many shows I've done with Nick at this point. I've probably heard this guy's name.
Taking Tony Finau?
Well, Finau's more of the gross side. I'm actually out on Finau this week for whatever that's worth. It's Jordan Spieth.
Ooh.
Tell me what you think about Spieth, and then I'll tell you why I'm taking him.
I don't mind it. Let's see, ownership. He's like 4%, 8. I don't know. I mean, the price is too cheap for the upside. He's driving it very, very well. Dude, I don't know, man. I like it. I like Jordy.
I'm a little
bit
bit
a ton of fairways and he's hitting it long. If the iron play, I mean, he was great at the Memorial. That's a tough type of tournament. Just shoot 72 and survive. Like I feel like Jordan Spieth does that for a living. I don't know if we're going to see him win a Birdie Fest, but I guess he was right there at the Byron Nelson too. Yeah, I love for that price. I feel like if this is 6 months ago or whenever before the injury and he made it known that his wrist was hurt, if you told anybody Keegan, Russell, Spieth, Sepp, and Shane Lowry are all the same price, you would take Spieth every single time.
That's kind of
Joel, wouldn't you? Right, like pre-injury and in a major.
Well, say the options again.
Keegan, Russell Henley, Jordan Spieth, Sepp Straka, Shane Lowry.
Well, as a pre-injury, maybe.
Yeah, like pre him even saying, because I know he played through it for a while, but like before he said anything, like I know his game was so volatile for the last couple of years, but he's always $1,000 more than those guys.
Yeah, I would agree with that in terms of where he's priced and in class of golfer, he's a bit ahead. But I would say he's been playing better this year, so it's kind of like you're in this torn of like, oh man, he's rising, but he's been so bad recently before this that it's like he's lost that luster. It's like almost like a different golfer. There's pre-Spieth and post-Spieth, and the post-Spieth golfer, which is the one we've seen the last 2 to 3 years, I would take Henley and Lowry over, I think, at this point. So it's a mixed bag. I'm not sure. I actually think the way what we've seen, I actually think he's priced fairly, but he does have upside. So I don't hate the pick.
Yeah, I mean, I think that upside is why he's underpriced. But the argument that would be made to that is we could take all the names that Nick just said. They're probably underpriced also, which is why they're as popular as they are. Like these are all names to me that should be $8,000 plus golfers. The thing that ended up leading me to Spieth to at least take a chance in this spot is I looked at approach putting. So like lag putting, players that were going to hit that first putt, not necessarily make it, but put it into a closer range. We talked about how quick these greens are going to be. Spieth was the number one player in my model in that category. And a lot of the off the tee data at similar tests did really like him. Like he was 13th for me in expected driving, and I never get an answer like that from Jordan Spieth. So I don't know if he's necessarily back. He has given flashes of excellence. We haven't necessarily seen him put it together for an entire event to win it. But, look, if he top 10s this tournament, I don't need a victory out of him. And it's one of those spots to where I will bet on the upside of what he presents. I just know that the floor is very low. I kind of gave that whole hesitancy of even making the pick because this is the prototypical selection that typically burns me in these spots.
Boom. Well, I think Spieth is an interesting one because I think he's very volatile, but I think for a guy in the 7K range, you get maybe he's probably lower owned than some of those other guys. I think to Nick's point, I think you're right. I think he probably does have equal, if not more, upside. So if you're looking for an MME type pick, I think he makes a ton of sense in this range. The audience, Spence, is asking, don't forget Ryan Fox's price. I'm not sure we're having an issue with the sheet or if it's not catching, but I am sure we will get that right for you there. Nick.
6,800. Yeah, 6,800. Give me Ludwig. That one's easy. Auto pick. I thought that's where you're going with Morikawa. So I figured once the audience and Spencer kind of did not have the salary to make it work for the most part, that I could wait on Ludwig and go burn. So give me Ludwig.
I was planning to go Ludwig here, so that is throwing me for a loop. Ludwig off the board. I mean, listen, he's coming around. I mean, he's been, we saw him. I think he was hurt. He wasn't playing as well, but the last 2 weeks he's looked much better. I like Ludwig, and at 90, what is he, 9,600? you're getting a significant discount for a guy who definitely has upside and has top 10, could win this tournament. Spence, how about you? Is Ludwig in your player pool this week?
I don't have a strong take one way or another. Like when I wrote about him in my article earlier in the week, I was talking about a player I was backing in every single section and a player I was fading in every single section. And the argument that I made for why you should be considering Oberg in this spot is compare him, like just use two golfers here, him versus Justin Thomas. He presents an off the tee acumen that can find high-end success. He is that Dustin Johnson sort of a build to where he can just dominate with the driver so heavily that he can potentially work himself up the leaderboard. Of all the golfers, $9,000 plus, there was only one name for me that landed outside of the top 25 in expected driving. That was Justin Thomas. So Thomas was my fade there. I think Oberg, if you're trying to shoot for upside, it makes a lot of sense. I don't have a pushback one way or another. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to use him, but I have not eliminated him yet from contention.
Boom. All right.
Not that much of a stamp of approval, though. I was not expecting that.
There's a little bit in between. Yeah.
In terms, like, if this is the number one test for off the tee acumen, like Bryson, him, Rory on a normal week, and Scotty, like Ludwig, it's right there. I was not expecting it. I'm nervous.
I mean, he's fourth in my model in expected driving for this course. Bryson's 1, Scotty's 2, Rory's 3. Oberg's 4. Very surprisingly, Joel, I'll tell you this. Colin Morikawa was 5. Was not necessarily expecting to see that.
I was. So all right, I'm telling you what, I'm scrambled here. The entire top of the board. I can't take Rory because I can't really afford it. I am in a bad place. So I gotta really rework where I'm going with this draft. Spencer, talk about something. Give me a minute here to rework this, where I'm going here.
Well, I'll ask you this question, Nick, not to necessarily influence the draft of where we're moving forward with it, but is there anybody who has not been selected yet that you are surprised about?
Let's see here. We got Straka, Shane. Well, yes and no. I feel like just because of distance, like this is what's wild to me, and what makes me want to play Rory McIlroy is just the fact that none of us are doing it. Like this is how, like, what we're doing right now is kind of how the public thinks too. So like how we're building lineups is probably very similar to what the public's doing. Obviously, we could, carry over some players that we can't do on this show. It makes me think that Rory's going to come in sub 10%, and that is very, like, the gambler in me wants to take that stance all day long at like 15-20% Rory at my 150.
Here's the thing I will say about Rory. I think as an outright ticket, he is this is famous last words. I think he's a very poor bet.
Yeah, no doubt.
I would rather play everybody in the $10,000 section. I do think that there is an overcorrection that has happened for DFS. This is still a golfer that is churning out top 10 results. This is, he's won 2 of the biggest tournaments this year in the Players and in the Masters. He completed the career Grand Slam. I feel like, Nick, you and I chased that for 4 seasons and
forever.
I wasn't on it when it happened. I don't know if you were or not, but
no, I was on. Let me actually pull up my card. I was on John Rahm at the PGA. I was on Bryson, John Rahm, JT, and that was pretty much it in the outright. Then a bunch of bombs that obviously didn't happen. So yeah, I chose Bryson and John Rahm, and then I went back to John Rahm at the PGA.
Yeah, I think the Rory
probably going back to John Rahm this week too. So whatever, gotta get it right eventually.
I started my card with Rahm, but I think that discussion for Rory does need to be had, at least for DFS here. I can make all the negative comments, like he's worse in every single statistical category outside of putting. The putter is really what made him better. But this was a 5-1 golfer where he shouldn't have been that. Now I don't think he should be 12-1 this week. I think he should be like 22-1 if I'm being honest with my numbers. But for DFS here, it's going to create a contrarian outlook. But Joel, do you have your selection?
All right, I'm ready to rock. I appreciate it. I'm going to take Victor Hovland first. I'm going to take him off the board here. At 8,500, let's not forget, Victor Hovland is a great iron player who can get hot with a putter. if he can stay in fairways this week, Victor Hovland has plenty of upside. I feel like 8,500 is too cheap. He could have been in that 9K range easily. So I think it's a really good value there with Hovland. With that second pick, I'm really torn between two guys. I'm going to put it out there. I just want to get your guys' take between Hideki Matsuyama and Brooks Koepka. Are we over the Brooks Koepka shows up in majors thing? Is that done? Or could this be a week where we get another vintage Brooks Koepka week where he shows up and competes at a major?
I'm going to take this really quickly. This is not to sway you in one direction or the other. I've seen videos and I've heard rumblings, which there may be something to this, that he may be hurt.
Brooks?
Yes. I don't know if that's true, but if Brooks is hurt, I don't know if we want to, with the show's history here.
That's fair. That's very fitting. I mean, end up taking somebody who gets hurt. All right. If that's the case, I won't take an injured golfer if that's the case. Now watch him go out and win the tournament. So you tell me not to take him, but I'll take Hideki here. I think, Hideki should be a good course fit for many reasons. Not going to find a ton of fairways, but in terms of those long irons, we know he excels there. He excels around the green. We haven't seen that big result from him recently, but that's Hideki for you. He kind of will show up in a week where you least expect it and give you a great result. And a major, especially, this could be the week. He's been making putts. He's got a solid all-around game. He's just got to put it all together. I think this could be the week he does it. So at only 8K, there's upside here with Hideki. So I like my team. Left plenty of money on the table, but if you're not going to play one of the guys at the top, you can certainly do that. Nick, I'll go back to you. Are you interested in Hideki and Hovland this week?
I love that I went for an injury thing, and we were talking about Brooks, and then the only other guy that's like the most likely player in the field to withdraw with the neck. I think I'm out on both. I just don't. I like other guys around that price range for the 8,000. Like you said, though, Hideki at like 5% is definitely, and Brooks at similar, like one of those guys being in a top optimal lineup makes a ton of sense. I feel like I'm just going to try whatever I can do to get to Victor Hovland or Neiman or Fleetwood. But that's also what the field's going to probably try to do. So I get the GPP there. If I had to choose, I would definitely choose Hideki like 10 days out of 10, so that would be my guy there. I'm going to can I let the audience pick for me between two guys? Am I 7,300 remaining? I'd like, gun ahead, I would just pick Connors, but he's already gone. I'm not going to do the Finau thing to myself this week. Was he putting one-handed at the Memorial? Yeah, dude, I'm out. That's scary. I don't know if that's just like a trial run, but that there's just no way that works. I am between. Well, real quick, what are your guys' thoughts on Minwoo Lee? Like, of all the driving distance stuff, and no one talks about Minwoo Lee, great putter. How's he on your lag putting stuff, Spencer? I'd have a very hard time like trying to model that, so I just don't.
I mean, from the lag putting that I ran it, he was 64th for 3-putt. He was 44th. I mean, if you want to take some combination of those two, I guess.
He's having the best. I know it's still a mixed bag and very volatile, but he's having the best ball striking season of his career with the irons. He's great at majors. I don't think he's ever missed a cut at the U.S. Open. Matter of fact, T21, T5, like it's him or Fitz. So I'm taking a someone with U.S. Open upside here, and I feel like I always love Fitz. So audience's choice of Minwoo Lee or Fitzpatrick. For what it's worth, I would rather have Fitzpatrick just because I have like a 0% Hubbard and probably a sub 2% Olsen. So I don't need to be too crazy. But I feel like if Minwoo makes this course look really short, obviously a very good wedge player, would not surprise me if he shot 72, 71, 73, 74 and is in the top 5 at 7,100 and no ownership.
All right, audience. Well, it's on you. You guys make the pick while we wait. Spence, which direction would you go on this one?
I mean, I know Nick thinks that I always take Fitzpatrick when given the opportunity to. I would probably say Minwoo Lee.
We got one vote for each, so we need that second vote. Someone just put Minwoo or Fitz.
We are.
Sorry, Spencer. Go ahead.
No, I was just like, it's kind of for the reason that Nick was talking about with Minwoo's profile gives you distance. It gives you some of that short game acumen, and he does have the long iron play. I don't love him necessarily in my model, but if you're telling me that somebody can make a big splash into this tournament, and I talked about a lot about Minwoo. It looks like it's going to probably be Fitz now we're back even again. So I really don't know.
All right, Fitz takes over. Give me Fitz. Minwoo's game is like that, like recent form is nowhere to be found. Obviously, like I think DraftKings probably got the price pretty close to right, and Fitz is going in the right direction. Fitz has because he dropped Billy Foster, right? That's no longer his caddy. He got Ben On's old guy. So yeah, Perret. I don't know how to say his last name, but he was here with Ben On, who I think did like top 15 in 2016. So give me the caddy and a previous U.S. Open winner.
Oh, all right. Matt Fitzpatrick, we're playing better, trending in the right direction. As you said, he's won a U.S. Open before. He can contend in these conditions. Spence, you're on the clock with your last pick. You have 7,500 to spend. Audience, you all follow up with your last there. Audience, you have 7,900 to spend. So if there's anyone you guys like above 7,500, put the nominations in now. Spence can't take him anyway. But Spence, without further ado, who are you taking with your last pick?
I'm probably not going to necessarily listen to what I am told to do as Nick did with his selection, but I do want to ask both of you, just because I'd like these names to get out there. So Keegan Bradley, Daniel Berger, Maverick McNeely, Robert McIntyre. I mean, we could get real cheap here and say like an Andrew Novak, Aaron Rye sort of selection. Do any of those names stand out to you more than any of those names that I've said?
I love the first three.
Yeah,
I'm out on Novak. No interest in Andrew Novak.
I always love Novak, but this is not the week for Novak for me. I'll be playing Novak another week. I think these tough courses like this typically aren't his best fit. Rye on paper makes sense, but I think I'm with Nick. The first three you mentioned are the three that would be my preference.
Yeah, the first three for me are surprisingly maybe so, just because we're looking at like two $6,000 golfers and the $7,400 price on Bradley. They are all top 20 win equity choices. I'm always very high on Daniel Berger. I've lost him the last two times with back-to-back missed cuts. I made the argument during that first tournament that he missed the cut to where like him and Rye should have been top 20 of the leaderboard if you took some of their baseline putting stats, and he went ice cold again with the putter. And I don't know if I can put myself through that three times in a row. It feels like it might be a little bit too much, but like if I'm building lineups, Daniel Berger will be somebody that I'm going to include. I'm going to take Maverick McNeely here. It makes my lineup a lot different. I leave money on the table off of this at 6,800 off, $700 left over. It doesn't just take like the very standard Keegan Bradley answer. I think he's very fine to take in any of these spots, but my model really liked McNeely this week. I talked about all those names being inside of the top 20 for me. McNeely was the 18th best win equity choice that I had, and he was inside of the top 15 from an overall rank perspective. So I talked about this at the beginning of the show, Burns, Henley being the two guys that I thought were going to enter that next range. McNeely was the third. So I think that kind of just makes sense to round out that build to finish the story that I was trying to tell there.
I'm glad you took him there. I'm a little surprised, but my main lineup that I had built for this week, I had McNeely in it. I like McNeely this week too. I think he's a little different. I think he's going to come with a lower ownership than the Henleys, the Keegans, those guys of the world. Even the Bergers, and he's still going to be owned, but I think he possesses a lot of upside. I think McNeely's a nice sneaky pick. Another name I want to throw into the hat there in that range that you didn't mention is Siwoo Kim. Surprised he doesn't get taken this week. He's a guy that has, I think, plenty of upside, should be a good course fit. Siwoo Kim definitely someone I'll be playing this week. But audience, great job getting that final pick in. Tyrrell Hatton off the board. That is a wrap for the draft tonight. It was a great draft. I think all four of these teams are pretty competitive. I think it should be a really interesting week. It's going to be a bloodbath out there on the course, which should be really entertaining. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch, and we should make some money. So if you haven't already, smash the like button. Give us a follow. It definitely goes a long way. You guys are the best audience in all of golf podcasting. We super appreciate you. You make this show go. Let us know what team you think is going to win. You guys are the champions right now. You're the king. But, of course, we're going to come back next week, crown a new king, and do it all over again. Before we transition here, as we always do, I mentioned Siwoo Kim. Another guy I want to mention is a surprise that did not go tonight, Bud Cauley. Bud Cauley's a value play down at 6,100, who I think should do well in a course like this. If you're really looking for a 6K value, I think Bud Cauley's a guy who's proven he has some upside. I'm surprised he didn't go tonight. But Nick, I'd like to go to you. Is there anyone else that you're surprised did not get drafted?
I mean, Keegan not going, Northeast guy at a Northeast course, playing great golf. Obviously, potential Ryder Cup stuff too with him. So that one, big time. Let me see who else. There was someone else that I thought would be very popular, and he's not.
I mean, I'm always surprised I don't take Patrick Cantlay. I'll throw him into the mix.
Dude, I feel like the public just hates him. And
Yeah.
I lose on him all the time. Denny McCarthy, maybe, just because of putting. I feel like he seems to be a popular guy I'm hearing on every single show. Really like Berger, so I'm glad you talked about him. I know the immediate form's not necessarily where it should be. See what you guys talked about that. What about JJ Spawn? I feel like 2 weeks ago, he was one of the most popular plays in DFS, like on a weekly basis. No one's on him. Touched on McIntyre. I like him a ton. What are your guys' thoughts, just out of personal curiosity, on Gary Woodland?
You know, Woodland's a guy that's my take is if a blank slate lineup, he's not getting in it. But if I get stuck to a point where I have to fit someone in, and if I had to dip low, he's one of the guys I could say he definitely has upside, and he's a guy that could probably compete at a course like this and the challenging. So he's one of those, like, if I'm throwing a dart or a Hail Mary on a low priced guy, he's a guy I'd consider, but it's not someone I'm looking to target.
I'm batting 1,000 with this answer that I've given over the course of like the last 2 months. But if I give a player that I am fading, they have missed the cut 100% of the time. And the player that I have backed against them has also missed the cut and done so in worse fashion. So I should probably stop giving these plays out on air because they don't seem to be working out. But it's actually a combination of the two guys that you both just named. I took Bud Cauley when that was minus 120 against Gary Woodland. That number is gone at this point. It's into the 150s now. I think it got up even into the 160s there for a second until there was some buyback to Gary Woodland. Woodland's, to me, a boom or bust option for DFS if you're shooting for upside. I think the floor is very, very low. Now that I've said that, it'll probably go miscut, and Gary Woodland will get the better of it. But if we're talking about it, this is the last question. I know we've run for a really long time. I appreciate everybody out there sticking with us for an hour and 20 minutes here. But
It's a major.
Yeah, you always have to push it a little harder. And I mean, I think it was kind of a foregone conclusion, Nick, if you put you and I back on a show together. It was going to be a little bit longer of an episode with it. But are there any $5,000 golfers that we have not talked about, if you are dumpster diving down in that range, that either one of you two like?
Joel, you want to go first?
Yeah, the one I'll mention, I think the guy we mentioned before the show, Spence, Emiliano Grillo. He's a guy who's really coming around. He should be a relatively good course fit. I don't really love his upside, to be honest. I don't think he's going to give you a top 10. But I do think a top 20 is in the cards, and if you're going to the 5K range, that's good enough. He's just playing good golf. So for a guy in as good a form as he has at only 5K, I think he's a guy that makes sense this week.
So I'm hearing a ton of him on random shows that I'm listening to, and I feel like his ownership is going to go up a little bit higher. And I don't do, like you said, the upside is probably very limited, but he is playing insane golf. Probably not going to miss a fairway. I'm just going to make the pivot over to Matt McCarty, and do never play Matt McCarty. The other guys that I have, that's really about it. Like, I'll probably keep Vic Perez in if his ownership's really low. I'll probably play a little bit of Nico Echeverria, and I'll take a couple darts at like 5,300, but I'll have a rule in the optimizer, like their max exposure is 1% to 2%, and they cannot be in another lineup with someone in that 5K range, because I'm not going to like double landmine it.
Yeah, I mean, now that we've gotten to this part of the show, I'll tell you all the $5,000 golfers that I had in my little player pool of options. So it was Matt McCarty, Chris Gotterup, Sam Stevens, Mark Hubbard, Victor Perez, Grillo, Nico Echeverria, and Jordan Smith. I think all those names make sense. And just to throw out a couple of bets into there that I think you can consider. I don't know if these numbers are still there, but if we're looking at golfers that are most likely to make the cut compared to what their numbers were, so the best value that I had, Number 1 was Chris Gotterup. Number 2 was Matt McCarty. Number 3 was Bud Cauley. That's where I'm hoping leads me in that direction with Gary Woodland. Stevens, Hubbard, Grazerman. I think all those names, I mean, Grazerman's a $6,000 golfer, same with Cauley, but I think all those names are probably a little bit more safety than what the price tag seems to be there.
I'll give a shout out to Brian England, who said, "What about got up exact same time?" So that was impressive. And again, I think got up's a good pick. So I think that's a good mention there for that one. Spence, as you mentioned, we are running long tonight. But one last question before we wrap up this U.S. Open show. I want to go for both you and Sticks. Give me your best bet of the week.
Oh God, I only have one bet of the week, so I'm doing that after the show. Well, John Rahm, I have that one. This is my Chan Kim style play. I took Ricky Kawamoto top 20 on FanDuel at 30-1. It's a ball striker from Japan. Probably will not make a putt and probably won't hit a fairway. But his ball, I mean, it's Japan Tour, but it's how I found Chan Kim back in the day. So I'm going to stick with the same principles. Ricky Kawamoto, 5,500, 0% owned. Probably misses the cut, but 30-1. I have it at 25-1 instead, so I'll take a little bit of value there.
Oh, all right. I love it.
I had to get us as the only show to mention this guy's name, unless there's like a Japan Tour podcast talking about him. But yeah, so we had to be a little bit different.
I love it. I love the different pick there. Everyone, write it down, follow along, get that W with Sticks. Spence, how about you? What's your bet of the week?
I think this price is still out there, so that's one of the reasons why I'm going to give this bet over everything else, because it's still a bet that you can find over at Bet365. I'll say Chris Gotterup to make the cut at plus 120. I faded Gotterup last week. I didn't play him for DFS. I had an Alex Noren matchup against him, and I know I do a lot of bitching at times about how poorly I've run in some of these spots, and the Sam Burns thing is, I think everybody saw what happened there. But if you take that matchup specifically, Nick, I don't have like the good angel on my shoulder with you trying to talk me out of Noren, although I don't know if we ever did a very good job of doing that with each other. But Noren was terrible last week. And if you look at that bet, Gotterup was one of the biggest underachievers in that tournament, should have massively made the cut. So I don't think that missed cut is any reason to jump ship with him. I think this is a nice buyback spot with him at plus 120.
Oh, I love it. All right. The one I'm going to throw out there for you, I really like, I know he was drafted on the show. I really like Tommy Fleetwood to get you a top 20 this week. Even money there. I think he's consistent, his fairways, the way he's playing. I'm not going to talk about Tommy Fleetwood winning the tournament, but a top 20 seems like a pretty safe bet for him. So I like Tommy Fleetwood top 20, even money. I actually think you get it at plus 105, so a little bit of an edge on that pick. That's a wrap for tonight. Sticks, we've missed you. Welcome back. We appreciate you coming on and drafting with us. I know you got your hands full. Congratulations on the baby.
Thank you.
And becoming a dad. And is there anywhere else we can find you recently? Where else are you going to put out any other work?
Should have, my like full player, like right up on almost everybody at DFS Army. And then that'll probably be it. Maybe I'll do my exposures on Twitter when I figure that out, but I am well behind. So as long as the Millie Maker doesn't lock up on me, I'll probably just put 150 placeholders with Tony Finau and know that those are the ones I got to take out.
Boom. All right. There you have it. That's a wrap for tonight. Sticks, you've been missed. Welcome back. Thanks for coming on and drafting with us. If you want to make some money, follow Sticks on Twitter. He will give you some winning plays as he has the last several years. Spence, anything else I forgot tonight?
No, I think thank you, Nick, for coming on. It's always a pleasure being able to talk to you. Everything I said at the beginning rings true. I think you are as sharp as anybody that there is in the space. And it was the best gamble that I ever took, kind of sight unseen, doing better golf with you. And look, I don't know what the future holds at this point. That seems to be the number one question I always get of where is
we'll be back. We will be back soon.
We will be back at some point. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who tuned in for an hour and a half today to listen to the show. Thank you for Nick for joining, and just good luck this week.
Boom. Good luck. Happy U.S. Open week. See you next week.